I'm very nervous. Can you tell? Okay, all right. I mean, when you have pioneers and women who've been doing this for so long sitting here, you feel like you know everything. You know everything that you need to know, because as a feminist myself, it was a word I could not associate with. And to be able to do that comfortably now is because of all these conversations we keep having in our homes, with our friends, and in our online spaces as well. So let's carry on. So ladies, just before I jump into it, I had a very interesting conversation with a friend yesterday. We were driving somewhere and he asked if I was a feminist, and I said yes, and he said, oh, you're one of those. So I said, yes, I am. And I asked him why he said that, and instead of answering, what he did instead was to ask me, are women really oppressed? And he rolled his eyes because he felt as though we were making a mountain out of nothing. Are we really oppressed? Are we really having challenges? So I'm going to ask this question as a reflection of what I'm thinking is a way a lot of people are thinking now. That women are actually just making a ton of noise. Feminists are actually making a whole mountain out of nothing that actually exists. So I'll start with Ife. I know you don't want to say, no pressure. What do you think? Do you think we are battling the same issues? Do you think we have issues to actually deal with right now, to consider struggling as a feminist and having these conversations we're having right now?
Yes, there's every reason for us to continue the conversation, and that has been part of the resistance towards PDM, because for a long time we've become complacent. That's what I think. And that was what has fed into this perception that somehow we don't have any gender issues. But we do. I think for me, my biggest issue now is us having this very narrow definition of who an empowered woman is. And that is what is making a lot of people not realize what the real issues are. Oh, women are going to school now. We have women heading all these high-profile, positions, and all of that. And so, of course, women are fine. And it's because of this narrow definition that is making us fail to see the persistent issues that, are of gender, concerns.
Shamima, what's your take on that?
I think, good evening once again. I will call myself a hybrid. And there's a story to that, a hybrid between the older generation and the so-called new generation. Because in my early 20s, when I had just graduated from, why are you giving me the side eye? When I just graduated from Legon, I had the opportunity to work with Legal Resources Center. And I think I was around the time that the DV Coalition was being set up or so. So I was the representative of the Legal Resources Center on the DV Coalition. So that was where all these great women were. And look what me, small minds. It was a great learning curve for me to be part of that long process till date. So I have a sense of the energy and the commitment and the sacrifice that the senior trailblazer generation gave the cause of women issues. And of course, as a woman in media now, I recognize the tremendous role that the media can and should play in informing and shaping more empowering narratives. So for anyone who tells you because they live in a city and they see all these upwardly mobile, beautiful, energetic, creative, entrepreneurial, great, young, old, mid-aged women achieving great things for themselves, it means they probably never have sat in a bus and gone anywhere outside the boundaries of Accra. Because if they even within Accra took a trip to, say, Nima, Mamobi, to, say, Jamestown, just that is even within Accra, to, say, a village in my hometown, Wa. And we've been seeing those videos recently. If you've been watching TV3, Bright Amfo has been bringing us videos of the realities that children and communities face on a daily basis just to survive. One example that really broke my heart recently was a video about children who had left the classroom to work on yam mounds in the farm so they could plant and hopefully harvest and hopefully sell and hopefully earn some money and hopefully buy some furniture for their class. 21st century Ghana. Yes. So if anybody tells you that we are full and we're looking for all kinds of things, it means the person's worldview is very narrow.
I mean, when you think about all the issues we talk about, there are many. We have education, for instance. We have financial freedom, whether women are financially free to make certain decisions for themselves. We talk of sexuality, rape culture. The issues are many. So I want to ask, where do you think we are now in this struggle, in this conversation? Mame, you want to take that?
I think it's difficult to define where we are because in everybody's individual journey, they might be in different places.
Right.
But I think where we are moving to is a feminism that is inclusive and a feminism that understands the ways in which different structures interact so that we don't leave out the most marginalized people in society. Because if your feminism is self-serving and it's about you and the position you're in, you will fight for only your liberation and leave the other women behind.
Right.
So even the ways in which class interact with your gender, the ways in which sexuality interacts with gender, the ways in which different race interact with gender, all those things are part of the ways in which we experience life and our lived experiences. And we have to acknowledge that in some ways, even though you are maybe not as privileged as a woman, there are queer women, there are trans women,
right.
There are women who are not class, women who are not privileged, women who are poor, who also have certain things that they're doing that they are a part of the feminist movement. And their struggles and their issues are our issues. I think that's where we have to be.
Francisca, what's your take on that?
Yes, thank you. I think that we seem to be moving around in a big circle. And as a young woman, I think I've gone past 30. I don't know if I should still refer to myself as a young woman, but as a young woman, that's the frustration. And I find a lot of women our generation to be angry about the frustration of not knowing where it is going. You're not exactly sure where you're at. You just know that this was not an issue some years ago, but today it's an issue.
Right.
I grew up, my dad would be in the kitchen, my mom would be in the kitchen, and so I grew up in a house where the kitchen didn't have a gender. You know, whatever you carry between your legs didn't determine that you stay in the kitchen or you don't. And as you grow up and you leave your home, that is if your home is not as sexist as other homes, it's outside your door. At a certain level, it's in your home. During adolescence, you notice that your brother is treated in a little way superior than you are.
More freedom, maybe.
More freedom. He's going to be the it for the family. He's going to bring fortune to the family. He's going to take the name to that next level. And so you have this struggle. In these times, you're able to talk about them, but you don't know where it's going, and it can be very frustrating.
Right.
Some of us are angry, and I think we should be allowed to be angry. There are those who are not angry, but it doesn't mean they don't show an emotion. There's also an emotion. I believe not being angry is also an emotion. And at least we are showing emotion, at least we are talking about it.
Right.
But how we react to the frustration of not knowing where we're going with women's empowerment or women's equality or women's rights, we should be allowed to have a certain kind of reaction.
All right, thanks. Francisca, Felicity, can you take this? You're a very vocal person online, and the outlets available to us today are quite different from what was available years ago. People criticize that social activism or feminists who make all the noise on these online spaces aren't really living the life of a feminist, or or just looking for some attention, or really they are not going to make any impact with all the conversations going on online because it does not transcend to the actual life a woman, a modern Ghanaian woman is living, or a woman in Ghana would be living today. Do you agree? Do you feel there's an impact, or you feel as though?
Okay, so I completely disagree with the notion that social media is not a valid place to have feminist conversations, and that it only remains on social media and it's only noise and you're only doing it for attention. Because we need to recognize that social media gives you a wider reach. It gives you a much wider reach than you would. Like, if I wanted to speak to a woman in North, I would have to travel there. But now, with the advent of technology, I can send the same messages via social media and it has a wider reach. And the reality is, since Pepperdom started, we're all here today because Pepperdom started online. That's why we're all here. I'm not saying everyone's doing their feminist things in their own spaces, but then Pepperdom has brought this event together. So having a place on social media doesn't delegitimize your movement. Actually, because that's a space in which we have so many Ghanaians now, so many young people, and even listening to the type of comments that people give, you realize that there's so much more work to be done on the so-called educated class. Because most people on social media are educated to a certain level, and even with them, the type of mindsets, because maybe, yes, FGM does not exist in Accra, but we're still policing women's bodies in the same way on social media. Look at the ways in which, Ghanaians even spoke about Ebony, and because she embraced her body in a way that we didn't approve of. So we cannot ignore these things and think, oh, it only happens in the North. Or the reason why people keep pointing us to these places is because they don't want to approach the issues in their face. So it's a way of deflecting attention away from them. So it's a them problem, they're othering, so they don't have to deal with the ways in which they marginalize women in their everyday life as well.
Well said. Another conversation that keeps coming up now is approach. I feel as if it's actually probably the main bone of contention people seem to have. A friend of mine actually online said, and quoted Nana Oyeleta as a feminist who was very polite in her approach, or very cordial in her approach. But he doesn't feel as though women today who claim to be feminists are doing the same. And it creates the perception that women are expected to be very polite about these conversations, about these issues we're talking about. What do you think about that?
First of all, we're talking about different playing fields here. I mean, social media is different. It provides a different experience to everything. And so we should also be mindful of those petty differences. Nana Oyeleta's era, there wasn't social media. Now there's social media. And I mean, we believe that there's even more reason for us to be on social media, because without Pepperdom, we'll still be on social media anyways. And if you're tackling mindsets and perceptions, where better to start than a platform that deals primarily with opinions? You understand? That's number one. And so social media is very, very important. Secondly, there are people who can never be won. There are people who are like, who we can win, but there are some we can never win, and we should be ready to accept that. And for such people, they will always come to the table with something to pick on. And so that is also another recognition that we need to give. Secondly, the whole point of what we are doing is to say, give me room, let me exist as I am. And I am a vocal, boisterous, loud person. Everybody brings their own individuality to the movement. Let's take preaching, pastors. The same message. Dr. Mensa Otabil will say it, very calmly. Put Archbishop Duncan Williams there, and he will add a few theatrics to it. Put Obinim, and you go all of the way. You understand? So everybody, maybe the same message, but everybody comes to the table with their own, individual personalities, and we should give room for that. We grew up in different environments. We've been shaped by different things. All of these things have impact on the ways in which we turn out in terms of articulating our thoughts, fighting for what we believe in, and standing up for others. And we should respect that. That is the whole point of what we are doing.
We say take women out of the box you've put them, and appreciate all the different kinds of forms that they can exist in. So that's mine.
All right. Shamima, I mean, you've lived in the limelight for quite a while. You have to engage people on a constant, and this is, as I was saying, a bone of contention for a lot of people. I know it's in a way it's kind of tied to what values we ascribe to as Ghanaians, but for you, first of all, do you see approach as a significant contribution to getting the message across at all? The pepperdem approach or the sugardem approach?
Well, I've been asked directly this question, and I've been asked to state my preference. And I say, look, I'm too strong in this media game for you to try to get to corner me in a place that you want so you can use it for your ill ends, right? So, look, the same arguments our seniors made were the arguments I made. I said to the person, women are not homogeneous. We are not a homogeneous band. In here, in this room, there are different colors, different shades, different sizes, different statuses, different social statuses. So our needs and our wants and our approaches can never, ever be the same. And at every point in time, too much meat never spoils the food, right? Because you're trying to speak to the differentiated audience as much as possible with different approaches and different strategies. The end goal is the same if it brings home the bacon. I don't eat bacon anyway, but if it does, it's good enough. If sugar them and licking them will bring parity and equity, hallelujah. If gingering them would lead to a rude awakening to the reality that put up or shut up, amen. You know? So let people, at least we are expressing, at least we are engaging, at least we are questioning the status quo, at least we are present. And sometimes all it takes is to be present to change something in a way that you think it's preferable to you.
Okay. And this is a question I think everybody else should have the opportunity to answer. For me, I think identifying as a feminist is a journey of unlearning so many things, making a ton of mistakes, and kind of figuring it out as I go. Because all you know at the basics is that this isn't right. I shouldn't be spoken to this way. I should be able to do this or that because I'm human, not because I'm woman. And so for me, I find it's a journey that I'm having to let go certain things I was told and pick up things that I feel are right. What would you consider your personal struggle, identifying yourself as a feminist and the struggle in general?
So before I get to that, I just want to say about the politeness thing. I don't understand why politeness is required of me. I genuinely don't understand, because I think for a lot of people, feminism is ideology and it's ideas. But at the basis of it are people's lives and people's actual experiences. So if someone is talking about rape, someone is talking about not having access to certain resources, and they are angry about these things and they are emotional about these things, they should be allowed to express everything that they are saying. I don't owe you politeness when you are trying to infringe on my life. I do not owe my oppressor politeness. So if you are coming to me to oppress me, why do I have to say, oh, please? When has that ever been a thing that we have expected of people? So why do we expect that of women? But in calling myself a feminist, I think I didn't struggle so much because I held feminist values before I knew feminism as a set of ideals and principles. And I started to self-describe as a feminist very early on. I was maybe 12, 13. Because I would read about feminism and I decided that it was in line with how I felt. Because to call myself anything else felt like a denial of myself. So I said it, and people had their opinions, and people had, their reactions, and people had their attitudes. But it's also, when you're young, you really don't care about certain things. Like, youth allows you a certain freedom from, I'm thinking, how do they feel about me in certain ways when you're very young? So I didn't have to do all the mental gymnastics about I want to be a cool girl, I want the boys to like me. I just didn't care. So I didn't struggle very much.
You know, I want to draw from what you were saying. I've always, growing up, I've always been, my twin sister and we've always been nonconformist. We were playing football way back in school, and we were playing football like boys. And so we used to get teased a lot as being boys anytime we played football. The point is that as you're growing up, certain things do not sit well with you. When I started working, work. In fact, I wanted to work even before I was 18, but my parents would not allow me. Around 1920, I managed to get an internship at Joy FM. And when I went there was an expectation that I conformed as a young woman, as an intern who didn't have a job per se, but was just there to learn the ropes. And you find yourself getting into trouble because I cannot conform. My mom saw my haircut and said, "Hey, another one." I cannot do the things that I know deep down are truly not me. And anybody who knows me and has grown up with me will attest to this. I think that a lot of us young women have these struggles within us. This is what we want to do, and this is what society is saying. So what are we going to do? And then we try, kind courtesy, the request for being polite and all that. We try to find a middle ground. So let me do it this way. Let me play football, but add some makeup and still look whatever. We try to find that middle ground, and I don't know what word to use, but you get to that middle ground and you're still not satisfied. You're still not happy about your situation. You have to be at that place that you want to be. Deep down within you want to be, but society is telling you, hey, don't go there. And so you struggle within yourself even before you realize that there's a struggle going on. And then the kind of media you're exposed to. Unfortunately, I think Prof talked about it. The kind of media that we keep watching, they're telling you that the highest achievement is to find a man who puts a ring on your finger, take you to his house and marry you, and you live happily ever after. There is no point. There is no point in that narrative that says that, oh, I love playing football. I play for Black Princess, Black Queens, Granny's Queens, or whatever. I continued that journey of the passion that I have. You don't get that anywhere. And that's the struggle. And when you discover that, oh, there's something called feminism, I didn't want to be associated with that word. One day I just told myself, I'm being very ignorant. Let me just go on Google and just search about it. Why are people talking about it? What does it mean? What has it been made to mean? And then I have to discover for myself what it means to me. Heck, I'm an African woman. English is not my language. But even before I started, or even before Africans began learning English, we had all these things in us. We knew that these are the things we wanted to do. You know that you have a passion. A woman who doesn't speak, an illiterate woman, a woman who doesn't speak English, has passion. And that passion drives her to achieve what she wants. And so you have that struggle within you that pushes you, and then you encounter some kind of media that starts to open your eyes. And then you're not afraid to call yourself that. So for me, I struggled. I will not deny it. I struggled. Being in the media, being expected to act in a certain way, being tagged with two labels that I do not like. I know my rights. Emotional. Is there a woman here who hasn't been given that tag before? And these days, I actually want you to tag me as somebody who knows her rights and somebody who is emotional. I cannot fathom a human being who doesn't have emotions. So I'd rather be emotional, and I'll claim it.
Felicity, I would ask you to answer the same thing. For you, what's your struggle?
Okay, well, I've always been a non-conformist anyway, so I grew up and my closest friends were boys because all the girls, when you're playing, their moms would come over and say, oh, Amma, come inside and come and help me cook Kojo. And I lived with my grandma, and so she didn't expect the same tasks from me. So I would always play with the boys, and after a while, I began to realize that being a boy is fun, and being a girl, when you're playing, at some point in the play, you're going to have to stop and go and do house chores, and I thought, oh, don't want to do that. So I was more of a tomboy, and I just noticed that girls had to behave they had to be subtle, they had to be gentle, and there was always something about my genetic makeup, I think, that was against those things, and I just thought, oh, this makes me uncomfortable. And I couldn't relate to that behavior, and I knew that I was supposed to act in that way in order to be considered the right type of girl. And this is even from, I'm talking about 8 years old, 9 years old. There was something about that girl that I knew I didn't want to be, because I felt that she was being boxed in. At that stage, I even knew that she was being boxed in, and I don't want to be in that box, because that box, it was too restrictive. So when I finally realized that, kind of read about feminism, I was about 16. And I thought, yeah, I'm a feminist straight away. Like, I identified with it. And even the fact that it had bad PR, where people think that feminists are man-haters and all the kind of negative things that came with feminism, I liked those things. I was never someone who cared much for people liking me. Anyway, like, I don't seek people's approval. So I knew that's not what feminism was. And even that people thought that that's what it is, it didn't matter to me. And it made me embrace it even more. Things that people don't like and reject, generally, I'm drawn to those things. So it's never really been a struggle for me at all. But okay. I do notice that when you say you're a feminist, people kind of jump back 3 times. And I'm like, yeah, good, you jump back. Because the thing is, there's something about that. They know, when it's even words like, I know my rights. Of course I want to know my rights. Why would I want to not know my rights? Because if I don't know my rights, that means that you will abuse my rights. So I don't think that there's anything positive in not knowing your rights. How can this be a negative thing? So when you say those things, I think there's actually something wrong with you.
Much more wrong with you than me. Well said. Shamima and Efe, I'll have you answer the same questions, and then I think we can throw it to the crowd, and we'll wrap up from there. So Shamima, would you go first? So the question is, what your struggle is.
I've always lived in 2 worlds, every stage of my life. So here I am, a young Muslim girl in a very large family, growing up in Kotobabi in the 80s. Our house was a melting pot from everybody who was traveling from our hometown, because my father was one of the early settlers in Accra here, and with ingenuity, he made a life for himself. So at any point in time in our house, we had not less than 30, 40 human beings being fed morning, afternoon, evening. I was my dad's first daughter, so, well, they were bigger aunties. So at dinner time, you had big bowls so this is the big bowl for the big boys, the adult men, young men, adult women, young women, children male, children female, the mummies in the house. Dad had 2 wives. So, right, so, and you would do the washing of those bowls as you're growing, right? Hard work. My mommy will always tell me that, have you ever heard somebody died from hard work before? And I was supposed to be, I was supposed to be lazy, even then. Ramadan was my most hateful experience, because Ramadan, the cooking is apt, because all kinds of visitors are coming to your home to eat. And you would wash bowls and wash and wash. Right. So I grew up knowing that a woman's place was to work at home, real hard. But my mom was a teacher, and she went to school accidentally. Of my grandparents, her father, she and another lady perhaps were the only people that had education. And that was because she was always interested in reading. So she said, look, everybody would use the lantern. And when they went to sleep, she goes to pick it up. And any piece of paper she finds, she would, in the thick of the night, she'd lay down and she'd be struggling to read. So an uncle, her big brother, who was then a student at Cape Vast, comes home one day and sees that, oh, she's reading. So, well, would you want to go to school? She said yes. At this time, people were saying the girl didn't have to go to school, blah, blah, blah. And she would work and work and work and go and stand by a classroom where they were teaching people. And she was not a student. She just runs to go and hide there and just listen, and she also learned. That's how she went to school. And her life path changed. But work at home for a woman and the role of a woman at home was enshrined. And this was a traditional setup that I grew up in. And at the same time, I had an opportunity to attend Morning Star. So you see, so here was me in Morning Star with rich kids who come to school early. I was always late, you know. Sometimes if we didn't have porridge, I had to carry a silver to Mama Obi to buy porridge. And it was this day I was carrying this silver, the 5 silvers, you know them, one of the big ones, to buy for them to share for people in the house before I get ready to school. And I was crossing the road. The owner of Def Traco, Joseph Edu, was a schoolmate. They were passing to school. And here I was with, you know, to go and buy cocoa, because we couldn't prepare cocoa that morning. So hard work, or the fact that women, you have to work. I grew up with that kind of environment, but I survived and proceeded to go to university, and within my, perhaps one of the first girl to actually go through the university. So, women rights, so it was a struggle. But you see, my mom was learned in the Quran. My mom always told me that the Quran is the most feminist book she has ever come across. Of course, with all religious texts, there will be those texts that you will read and you will cringe. And it would challenge you, you would wonder. But then you come across those liberating texts, like the fact that a woman is not enjoined in Islam to take her husband's name upon marriage, or that knowledge is compulsory, the acquisition of knowledge is compulsory for the Muslim man and the Muslim woman. And if you had to go as far as China to seek it, you were enjoined to go and seek it. When you come across this liberating text, the fact that a woman has rights to income, which is hers, to determine how to use, without influence or sway from her husband. When you come across, this is feminist language, is it not? And yet we have all agreed here that being a feminist doesn't mean you don't cook, to invite friends or take care of your family and all of that. We have all agreed to that, haven't we? In fact, the woman has such a role to play in shaping the minds, and that's why education is critical for the woman in Islam in terms of what the Quran teaches. What the practice is different, because we all know we come from patriarchal societies and people would always use religious texts in the ways that, you know, suits their comfort, right? So the woman, it is because education is vital for especially a woman that she has such influence, or is expected to have such influence on the upbringing of her children. If education wasn't important, the Quran would not give a woman such huge responsibility. Of course, we are now saying that it's a shared responsibility between a man. So my journey never ends. It can never end, because it's a constant search and challenge and learning and relearning and unlearning, and we still soldier on. But the basic is that, what do you want? Woman, what do you want? And what would you do for what you want?
Well said. Ife.
Okay, so for me, it's been a very long and winding journey, but I'll start with my mom. So my mom is an Ikuapem, and we know that Ikuapems have there's a stereotype with Ikuapems to be very humble and respectful, you know? And growing up, that was like my mom was popular for that in our extended family. So at my dad's side, at her side, she was the Kwapim humble woman. And, you know, that was her nature. That was her nature. She was, I mean, aside that, she's really fun. She was a huge fan of Ebony, so that should give you an idea. But she's fun and all, but she always, that was her image, that was her identity. And growing up, I found out that she always found the need to stick to it. And, you know, show that, let that be her best foot, which isn't a problem. But then I found out that, I realized that she was also under pressure to produce the same kind, because that's what we want to see in women, right? So she was also under pressure to produce that same kind of, you know, that product. Till date, she'll come into my messy room and say, hey, I'm a Grace, me pa me bani. You know, she was under pressure to produce that same kind of person. And that wasn't the problem. It was that everything that was being impacted in me, every training I was giving growing up, wasn't for me. It was always so nadacho warrior. And this was as early as 5, 6, 7, 8, your chores start. And it's always, I hate fufu. I hate the process of fufu. Hey, what if you go and marry a man who likes it morning, afternoon, and evening? Or you're late. You're watching your favorite cartoon, you're watching your favorite sitcom, and it's come and do this in future. You will marry. You know, and it was always for that, you know, for a man. I want to do a second piercing. Ghanaian men don't like that. You see, it's so for me, it wasn't the training per se, it wasn't the impact, but it was the reasons, you know, that were being given that really annoyed me. And to date, she knows that if she wants to correct me, she better not add a mema or for a man. Otherwise, that is the more reason why I will do it. Because I tell her that the moment she exposes, she makes me realize that this is something men don't like, or men in our environment don't like. That is exactly what I do. Because I don't want to attract the average man. I want to attract an extraordinary man. So she better not add that clause. So it was, you know, it started from that, processing my upbringing and how everything was just revolved around men and for my future and for my husband. And it was just so annoying. It took away a lot of my childhood. Your playtime, you have to come and do this because you marry, because you do that. And then I started questioning. But generally, I had a very revolutionary dad. He was like the opposite of the average, you know, Ghanaian man you find. He was very useful, helpful at home. I didn't think anything was male, female, unless my mom was the one impacting it. But he would grind meko, he would bathe us, you know, he would get us ready for school. As old as, I think, 8, it was my dad who was getting me and my sister ready for school. And I even preferred him bathing for me because bathing time was playtime. But my mom, no, she saw you playing that dirt. So she has to scrub your body for you to know that. And then my dad is more like, you know, yay, let's have fun. And he was a Sunday school teacher. So we'll sing rhymes and play. And by the time you know, you are done. So when it came to gender roles and gender expectations, like my dad was just, you know, was just the opposite. But then here I was. And so he gave me that opportunity to be, to dream, and to just explore. My dad loved to travel. He would take us all around the country, to the hinterlands. Every vacation we'll go and travel. I saw what was happening elsewhere, you know, and that all of that also, you know, impacts on your imaginations. And then, so I was vocal throughout my primary and junior high schools. And to date, my primary school teachers and JHS teachers will see me and they're not surprised with everything I'm doing now. They're like, as for Efe, that girl, we know her. But here I was, as vocal and as strong and as forceful as I was, and I was still, I wouldn't want to be called a feminist. I mean, people would call me. At a very young age, I was called Gifty Auntie at some point. I was called Mame Dokno at some point. But, you know, when it came to feminism, I would, you know, reject the tag. I was like, because we all knew what was done to feminists, what feminists lived through here. The image, they said feminists don't get married. I said, me, I like love, Papa. Hey, you know? And so as for the tag, it took a while until in my final year in college, I took a course that nobody was willing to take because the woman who taught it was too mamejata. And today, wherever she is, if she's listening, if you know her, Mrs. Philomena Abaka. She used to be Mrs. Philomena Abaka, now she's Philomena Yeboah. She's taken on her husband's name now. And I took her course, Female Writers of Africa. And I got introduced to writers like Mariam Abba, Chichinda Ganriba, Ama Ateidu. I had encountered Ama Ateidu books, I think Marriage of Anansawa, but those were, very mild themes, till I encountered the real ones. And then I was like, okay. The realities of an educated African woman and the blurry lines between culture and religion and the loyalties that she's expected to play to all of these things, plus the manifestation and the responsibility of her to show proof of her education. How are you educated but having to conform to some of these, problematic cultural and traditional expectations? And for me, that was what really opened my eyes, and I was like, okay. So I started reading about feminism, and I started impacting my knowledge and trying to understand how the system of patriarchy works, and that's why I love that word so much. Once I began to notice how, the structure works and how it operates on our minds, and everything, it just gave me the power. And so I had always been a strong girl. I had always been a confident girl. I just had to fine-tune it into something, something that I believed in.
Yeah. Wonderful. I think now that we all have a good assessment of the ladies sitting up here, your questions are welcome. If you have anything to ask, this would be the time to do that. I have 5 minutes, so we're going to make it real quick. So we will spend 2 minutes asking the questions, and then we can answer them.
Thank you for the contribution. So just a question. It strikes me that in a lot of the younger feminist organizing that I see, the feminism is working on invisible power. It's working on social cultural norms, cultural discourses and representation, but less so on the formal visible power. Like the previous generations worked a lot on law and policy, on the state and frameworks. And I'm just wondering if you think that's a fair assessment, and if so, why is it so? Is there an appetite for working on formal power and transforming formal power relations, or do you feel that the impetus is more to work on this in the social cultural domain, in the individual beliefs and ideas and practices, and how we're relating to each other in space?
Okay, so we'll keep that in mind. Another question?
Thank you very much. I must commend the generation that came before, because when we started getting aware of what the patriarchal society we live in, it was that direction of either the DV coalition. It was very focused. We were working towards something that can change. We were working towards very concrete things, not saying current concerns are not concrete. And my question actually dovetails into or out of yours. What are you continuing? Because the work is no burden. What are you continuing? What concrete goals are you looking at? What are you looking to change? Because we keep hearing we're changing the mindset, we're changing the paradigm. But I think one person said there's some things that are not going to change. Individualistic beliefs. For individuals, it's their right to think the way they want to think. But are we thinking about changing structures? Are we thinking about changing systems that can make you stand up and say, no, you cannot abuse me at the workplace because there's this place and I can fall back on that for my rights, which I should know.
We'll take 3 more, and then we'll try and answer those. There are many hands up, so we'll just wait until the next panel to do that. So there's a young man over there in the pink shirt.
Thank you very much. My question has to do with at what level would Pepperdem say that we have achieved our goals? Like, at what level are you expected? I went to Pusiga last 2 weeks, and female genital mutilation is still ongoing. As we mark the International Women's Day today, what will be your call?
Okay, 2 more. 2 more questions. And there's someone there who had her hands up for a while.
Thank you very much. I realize that this is a panel of writers, communicators, journalists, and so my question is about communication, because I think communication is essential to the entrenchment of inequality cause and the sustainability of any cause. And I want to borrow from a line from J. John Spoon. She said something like, the vocabulary of a liberated woman rages offensively or something. And so I want to know from the panel of communicators, why do you think the vocabulary of feminism is so offensive? Is it the language itself that is problematic, or what is the problem? Is it detached from reality, or what is the problem?
Okay. One more question.
Hi, my name is Selassie. I would like to know, the biggest single cause of maternal mortality is complications from unsafe abortions. What can we as young feminists do to improve the situation? Thank you.
Okay. This will be the last one, and then the next question could be after the next panel.
Thank you. I think it's very critical, given the context of the dialogue or the conversation today. What will the new generation or the new gen want or expect from the intergen and the pace setters to support in this journey? You've all talked about your experience, your motivation, what is inspiring you. What kind of support do you anticipate?
Okay. All right. So I think one of the running questions is basically what you intend to achieve. So this will go to the PEPEDEM members. Effie, you want to take that?
So with Jessica Horn's question, I think that's a very fair assessment. It's a very, very fair assessment, your assessment you made. And that is because none of us actually set off to be activists or advocates. The tags were actually just put on us, and we decided, okay, let's make good use of this. For us, it was just talking on social media, like I would go and talk about Black Panther or talk about anything else. But then I decided to dedicate my page. She decided to dedicate her opinions and her voice to gender issues. That is how basically it started for us. I may have had some bits of gender training from my master's studies. Others haven't had that. And we know that a lot of theory and a lot of technical knowledge also needs to go into this. So that's also something that we need to bear in mind. At the end of the day, that is why we are here today, and that is why the next session is really important. We need help. Now I know how to talk. Nobody can take my voice away from me. But how do we approach the system, the structures, to get policy work done and to push for bills, and that we need help. I'm going to sit here and talk for myself even before the team comes in. We definitely need help. But I think that with the voices and with the power of our voices, that is obviously also a very great tool to use. I mean, we brought the entire nation to a standstill. The entire nation came to a standstill because of our voices and our relentlessness. So it is important, but we definitely need help. So we are here for help.
Okay. Felicity, I want you to take this one. I think the other question the man over there asked was, what would be, I'm paraphrasing, what would be the ideal picture where you say PEPEDEM has done this significant and it's impactful?
Okay, I don't really envision that we'll ever reach a stage where we'll say we're done. I don't think that we'll ever reach that stage, because even if certain issues stop happening, with gender issues, like now, okay, like in the UK, you have the right to vote. Everyone has the right to vote, but then there's other issues. There's gender pay cap, so there will always be new issues that will crop up after you solve the old issues. I don't ever think that PEPEDEM would say we are finished or we have reached our optimum levels, but we want to see there has to be progress, and that's why we're pressing for progress. There has to be progress, and that's where the focus is on. So I don't really see it as an end goal, like this is where it will end. I think that even the things that we're doing today, to see the real changes is going to take about 50 years, maybe 100 years, maybe we won't even live to see the changes that we're trying to effect. So that's not the aim. It's just looking at the future generation and hoping that the females especially can live a better lives and have better opportunities than we did.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Just so that it's not as though it's the responsibility of PEPEDEMs to ensure that women get to a certain level. I think for the gentleman who asked the question, great question. But for you as a man who lives in a society with women, where would you also want women to be?
Good question.
So I think that that's a responsibility or a burden that we must all bear, irrespective of our genders. I want to speak about personally what I want to do. I'm a young communication and person and journalist. What I want to do is to tell stories, or make films about women in Ghana and the kind of women I want my daughters, your daughters, their sons to see. Enough about talking about the problems of Ghana. We will always have problems. And as a media person, I think that there's a huge responsibility on us because we control what people consume and thus they become. And so we all need to ask ourselves, because we're all storytellers in the making, what kind of stories do we want to tell the next generation so that they won't be sitting here talking about cooking, talking about God knows what. The conversation would have moved on from there. And so every one of us has a kind of responsibility.
Okay, great. The last question we would take, and Mame and Shamima, you probably would answer to that. A young lady asked, what exactly do people find problematic about the word feminism? Is it the language, or is it what about it makes it so problematic?
I think, what do you find wrong about, the definition of the word feminism? Because I think one thing we've all agreed is that sometimes you need to find a name to help you move along. It will mean different things for different people. So look for the bit that is comfortable for you and go with it. That's all I would say. But as also, just to conclude, the women in media, I know that when we're doing a lot of the activism towards DV Coalition, there always seems to be this schism between the activists and those in positions of power and influence to make change. Moving forward, in the formation of coalitions, we need to work to have representations of from people who are in policy making, from media especially, women in media especially, which I represent. I'm here on behalf of the Alliance for Women in Media Africa. And we have to learn what the discourse is about. And we need to present stories. Right now, there's so much opportunity to create and distribute content. I mean, BBC is opening an Igbo service, a Hausa service, a Pidgin service. They're telling us that they now want to recruit Africans who are telling African stories. Hello? So what are we doing? Obviously, there's such rich information that we could use to create content ourselves, but we cannot create compelling content if we ourselves don't create the space to educate and be open to new experiences, new learnings, so we can inform in a more informative and educative manner. Social media, unfortunately, is turning everybody into a creator and a distributor of content, and in the era of fake news, we now know that legacy media is a go-to option for validation. So for those of us who are in legacy media, there's a renewed opportunity for us to reassert ourselves as authorities for true, authentic, real, relevant, and meaningful stories of women from the continent.
Thank you. Thank you, Shamima. So, Mame, your final words, and then a response to the question that was asked. Is feminism problematic?
I think the reason why the word feminism is such a hot word for people now is because the movement is uncomfortable. The word is uncomfortable because the movement is uncomfortable for them. And the movement is uncomfortable for them because anything that is going to get in the way of what has systematically advantaged you will be uncomfortable. Nobody wants their power removed. Everybody thinks that their power has to be removed for somebody else to come. That's what they expect from feminists or from feminism, is that it's going to disadvantage me and full stop. And so that's why they get so upset. And that's why they're in their feelings about certain things. No, honestly, that's really what's it is. They're just in their feelings about it. Why do they have to do this too? Why do women have to do this too? It's really about being in their feelings and not wanting to be disadvantaged. But in the room today, I feel like there's also been a lot of conversation about feminism being about being able to make choices for yourself and being able to choose what you want to do. But I think feminism also has to be about interrogating the reasons why we make certain choices and the reasons why we like what we like. Because we cannot pretend that we grew up in vacuums. We have all been affected by the society that we grew up in. If you find your worth in cooking for a man, maybe interrogate that.
maybe think that through a little bit. If you find your worth in performing certain things that have been expected of you, just think about it a little bit and see whether that's actually what you as a human being want, or that's what you've been taught to want as well.
That's deep. Thank you, ladies. Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful, insightful panel, and I think my parting was basically the approach will be different, whether you like it or not. There was an MLK and then there was a Malcolm X, but they got the job done. They got the job done. So let's be prepared to listen more than to argue or to be combative. This is basically to find an ideal space where women and men can make decisions that benefit them, that ultimately make us happy. That's really it. So treat yourself, treat others the way you want to be treated. That's really the bottom line of feminism or any kind of activism. Thank you.